Oi oi, it's your boy, the immortal bard of discussing the bad UFC card, Jack Slack. It's the Jack Slack podcast, and we're coming at you on Wednesday the 9th of July, ahead of UFC versus not at the Apex. They had the nerve to charge for this. So I said a few weeks ago, once I got back from my holiday, I'm only doing good fights now, or I'm only putting effort into good shit now. So this week I wrote an Advanced Striking 2.0 study on Jersey Joe Walcott, one of my favourite boxers ever. Go read it. It's about cross steps. It's about classical side steps. It's about the weirdest left hook I've ever seen. The man goes heel toe on his punch, which is bizarre. It's about holding the top rope and changing direction. It's about clapping, pulling up your shorts, shimmying your shoulders, walking around the ring twice, and then hitting the guy in the chin. Like your Charlie Chaplin. If that sounds like it might be up your street and you're not decided, pull up some Jersey Joe Walcott highlights right now and have a good time, because currently we have professional full-time MMA heavyweights who can't do shit. And Jersey Joe Walcott was working in a factory with 6 kids and still coming out and putting on clinics on young, talented heavyweights at the age of 40, but may have been much older. He's one of those classic boxers where it's like, no one actually knows when he was born because he doesn't have a birth certificate. But he started fighting professionally in 1930 and he won the heavyweight title for the first time, well, the only time, in 1951. So 21 years to become an overnight sensation. Well worth a read. And if you don't want to read that, go find the old article I wrote on Jersey Joe Walcott. Was it called like The Tragic Life of Arnold Cream? But it was on Fightland. It was one of my best, but they, all the gifts have since gone and you'll have trouble finding it too. So 2 different Jersey Joe Walcott articles just to appreciate an old but talented heavyweight. Before we talk about 2 schlubs, Derrick Lewis versus Talison Teixeira, I went out of my way to try and watch some Talison Teixeira fights this week. He's 8-0 as a pro. I don't believe he's got any amateur fights. But if he is 8-0 as a pro, you can't find the fights. I've got 3 fights and 1 YouTube short I've seen of this guy. You may remember him from his UFC debut in his last fight. That was back in February. He knocked out Justin Taffer pretty easily. Lovely elbow in the clinch after sort of pushing him there along the fence. But that's a Taffer brother. They're not very good. But on the other side of it, this is heavyweight. There's not a lot of fighters here. So straight into a main event against Derrick Lewis, who is the watershed at heavyweight if you are not super elite. He can get a nice knockout and do a meme afterwards. He'll come up with a new meme. And if you are decent, he's going to gas out horribly and possibly die of heart failure. Dada 5000 style. Throwback to that amazing photo someone took in the locker rooms before his fight before last, where he gassed out horribly and he was eating like a full plate of chicken and rice and gravy and stuff in the changing rooms before the fight. That one was such a funny... The one where he seemed to lose a load of weight and he was putting up pictures of himself running every day. And then he came out and he literally looked exactly the same when he got in the cage and then got tired faster. But he's a known commodity because he said my balls was hot back in... Was that pre-COVID? Got a title shot off that. Has since moved into this role where the UFC puts him on top of cards for some reason, even though his fights never go 5 rounds. And he still sells out stadiums or whatever. So good for him. Talison Teixeira, what I've seen of him, I quite like. He's 6'8", he's gigantic. What's his reach? It's got to be like 80, 82 inches. 83, there we go. What I liked about him when I was watching him was... uses his jab, which is what you want from a gigantic guy like that, because, again, being a gigantic guy is not the key to winning. Stefan Struve was a gigantic guy. Stefan Struve was 7 feet tall, and yet he walked up to people and let them hit him in the face. If you are tall and you know how to use your reach, then, you can be semi-shilt and you can just be untouchable. But very, very few tall guys like that, like Hong Man Choi, 7'5" or whatever, never landed a jab in his life. But then on the other end of that, you've got Valuev, who is very tall and decent. And then the Klitschko's just avoided him for as long as possible and then never had to fight him, actually, which was quite cool. But Teixeira uses his jab, uses his uppercut, which is another nice one from a tall man. And then what I really liked was that he feints. He feints his jab and then stands there or pulls. He stands close enough so that after you swung back at him, he can hit you. Now, that is something where being a giant is a huge advantage, because when you're tall, you can more easily do one of the hard things of boxing and striking, which is to throw a punch, stay in range, let the opponent miss, and then counter. Now, if your range massively exceeds the opponent's, you can jab them in the face, lean back a tiny bit as they swing back at you, and then still be in position to hammer them with like a right straight or a left hook or whatever. If you're the same size as your opponent or shorter, you have to jab in, change level, jab and dip, jab and slip. You gotta do it in front of them where you're actually in danger. If you're a gigantic tall dude, you can lead, not really be in danger as they swing back, and then counter quite comfortably from that really long range. I will say that his feints are very obvious. He's lunges forwards with his shoulder and then juts his chin up in the air in a way that he doesn't really do when he jabs. But, beggars can't be choosers. We got a heavyweight who feints and uses his range and leads to get on the counter or feints to get on the counter. So I'm very happy about all that. I'm trying to remember who it was I was reading the other day. Was it? It might have been Tommy Loughran, someone I've also done an Advanced Striking 2.0 on. I was reading an interview with him, and he was talking about how he basically honed his craft by standing in front of a mirror and making sure that his real punches looked like his feints. And Sugar Ray Robinson said the same thing in his autobiography. At a certain level, if your feints don't look like your actual blows, they're just going to stop working. Someone who's really good at feinting currently is Yotin. Yothin. You can go watch him on YouTube for free. He fights in RWS. He's the Russia Danern. Is he lightweight or featherweight? He's one of their champions, and he's 33 years old, which is unusual in Muay Thai. That's an old man in Muay Thai. And all his offense basically builds off the fact that he's very good at faking his right kick. He comes out and he throws a couple of hard calf kicks with his right leg. Calf kicks. I said calf kicks in Muay Thai. That's crazy, right? They only exist in MMA. But he throws a couple of hard low kicks with his right leg off the bat, and then he starts faking it. He just steps forward onto his lead leg and pumps his right hip a bit, and they start picking up their leg to check, and then he starts building off that. He starts lunging through with elbows and punches, trips on the standing leg, cut kicks. He was fighting a guy called Chyla in his last one, who was, I think, the top-ranked guy aside from Yotin. And Chyla was a southpaw, and he was using fakes to get Chyla to pick up his leg, and then as it came down, he'd throw a low kick shin to shin on the inside of the lead leg, which is crazy. But he had him limping by the end. There you go, another interesting fighter you can go and watch instead of getting excited for Derrick Lewis fight. But I see Talison Teixeira trying to use technical striking, which is really important because, think of Rubeles Despan, who is he's another gigantic freak, but every success he's had at MMA, despite his Taekwondo lineage, has been through swinging wild and being a gigantic athlete. Talison Teixeira is beating people on being a gigantic athlete because he's able to punch them from a mile away, but he's trying to put stuff together cleverly. So the feints, and then he does quite a nice attempt at a shoulder roll after he throws his jab, which is another way to get back on the counter. You jab, you stay in range, but you roll down behind your shoulder, you turn with the blow. The problem is that he doesn't really turn with the blow, so his shoulder is flush to his jawline, which is one of the things that MMA fighters just don't get to begin with the shoulder roll. If you watch someone like